Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for being here today. My name is Caroline Riskowich. I won't ask you to spell that. I can hardly do it myself. But I am so happy to be here today with all of you. Thank you for taking the time out of what I know is a very busy life and a time-consuming role as a caregiver for someone living with dementia. I don't take it lightly that you chose to spend your precious time here with us. So thank you. The topic for today's presentation is creative engagement. But before we get going, I have an important question. How are you doing today? Can you just shout out one word? Happy, sad, terrible, awesome. How are you doing? Happy, bad, exhausted, I think I heard. Keep them coming. Grateful. Uncomfortable. I want to hear more about that at some point. Okay, it's private. Okay, we will not ask follow-up questions. Well, I am feeling very grateful to be here. And like I said, I'm grateful for all of you. You can see my slides here. We're working with the projector. Like I said, we can also send this out. If you can't read the slides, don't worry. I will say all of the important stuff. So if you can hear me, we'll consider that a success. Like I said, my name is Caroline, and I'm part of the team at Dementia Inclusive, Inc., which is a nonprofit in Durham. So I'm very happy to be here in the Outer Banks. It's beautiful and a short drive from Durham. I can't wait to come back. I'm also an independent care manager. So that means I'm a senior care manager or a geriatric care manager. You've probably heard those terms. That means I work one-on-one with older adults and their families to help navigate all of the resources that are out there. In the awesome panel discussion that happened before this, we heard a lot about those resources. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to know that there are resources out there, but how do you then put those things in place, right? How do you manage all that? And that's what a senior care manager can help you do. I'm also a trained leader in a program called Powerful Tools for Caregivers, which is a 6-week session that we do for caregivers of people living with dementia that gives tools for self-care. It's all about the caregiver because that is a very, very tough job, as you know. And that's a program that helps support. We lead that in person and virtually, and it's free of charge. Maybe it's something we could offer virtually to the caregivers here in the Outer Banks from our Durham office. I'm also a TimeSlips certified facilitator. And the presentation that I'm going to be giving today is really rooted in that program. I highly recommend checking out the website, timeslips.org, if you're at all interested in what I present today. You can wait and write down that website after you see if you like the presentation or not, but that's the source for a lot of the things I'll be sharing today. I'm also a writer. I've been working with older adults since I was in college, so I won't say how many years that's been, but I write about my work with older adults, especially people living with dementia, on my blog called My Friend Charlie. So that's www.myfriendcharlie.blog, and you'll see a lot of stories there about people living with dementia, including a lot of caregiving tips. I also, most importantly, have personal experience as a caregiver, as a care partner, like you all, with my grandparents.
I'll send these slides out to them.
Okay, and these slides will be sent out to you as well. Thank you, Diane. And this is a picture. Here I am with my grandmother, and all of my grandparents experienced some form of cognitive decline before their passing. So although this is my professional work it's also something that I can relate to on a personal level. And again, that's why I'm so, so grateful to all of you for being here today. So you may have seen my presentation title, Creative Engagement, and thought, I am not creative, this is not going to resonate with me. Does anyone in the room consider themselves to be creative? Raise your hand if you would say, yes, I am creative. Okay, good, good. What sort of creative things do you do if you raised your hand? Crochet, awesome. Photography, great. Writing poetry, doing stained glass. Those are great, yes. Music with people living with dementia, that's wonderful, thank you. Painting, that's a great example. Flower arranging, I love that. That's a beautiful form of creativity. Anyone else do something creative they want to tell us about? Cooking, yes, I love that. That's a great one. Yes, eating, yes. Let us know next time we should come over. So those are great examples of creative expression. Oftentimes, we think creative and artistic mean the same thing. So when I talk to someone about engaging creatively with a person who's living with dementia, they say, I'm not creative, I can't do that. But although not all of us are artistic, we may not all be able to do photography or crochet or stained glass, we are all creative. So believe it or not, if you are in this room, you are a creative person. So I'm sorry if that's a shock to you, but everyone here is a human being, right? Is everyone here human? As far as we know, okay. So all humans are creative. I love this quote. It says, creativity simply asks that we use our imagination to solve problems. You don't have to draw to do that. Or what about this from Psychology Today? Creativity encompasses the ability to discover new and original ideas and connections. I love this quote from Mary Lou Cook. Creativity is inventing, experimenting, growing, taking risks, breaking rules, making mistakes, and having fun. So we're in a room of caregivers right now. Has anyone here ever had to use their imagination to solve a problem? Right? I'm sure we have faced many challenges where you have to think on your feet. Has anyone here ever had to take a risk? Yes. What about make a mistake? Has anyone here ever made a mistake? Yes, okay. That was unanimous, yes. And having fun. That sometimes can feel like it's pushed to the back burner as a caregiver. And my hope is that by infusing creativity into our engagements with people living with dementia, that we can start to have a little bit more fun. So you might be thinking, creativity is great, but how does this apply to me? What exactly does this mean for a caregiver? And it's a good question, and I hope by the end of this presentation you'll feel like I've answered it. So again, that quote from Mary Lou Cook about experimenting, taking risks, making mistakes, that resonates to us as caregivers, right? And that is about creativity. We are creative. If you've ever made a mistake, if you've ever thought on your feet, if you've ever taken a risk, then you are a creative person. So pat yourself on the back for that. And next time somebody asks if you're creative, every hand should go up in this room because you are. Teepa Snow, who many of us know as a huge voice in this community, says one of the best things you can make as a caregiver is mistakes. And the way I hear that is if you're making mistakes, that means you are trying new solutions. You are trying things, you are taking risks, and you can learn from those mistakes, right? It's not something to shy away from, but something to embrace. So I heard a lot of yeses when I asked if we've ever made a mistake as a caregiver, and I want you to know that that's not only okay, but it is encouraged and supported. So what connects us? What connects us as human beings sharing this planet, doing life together? I think we often use shared experience or shared memories as the foundation for connection, which is great, but that can lead to a problem when you are trying to connect with someone who has dementia. When I'm together with my family or friends I haven't seen in a while, one of the main ways we connect is by reminiscing on old times, right? Talking about things we've done together. Asking, oh, have you seen so-and-so? Or are you still doing this? Catching up in a way that if you look at it, depends on memory. So what if we based our relationships and our interactions on something else? Something other than shared experience or memory? What if we used creativity and imagination as the springboard for meaningful engagement? So not shared skills, not even common interests, not mutual memories. I used to work as a health services navigator in the social work department at a CCRC, or a continuing care retirement community. And if you looked at the activities calendar in that facility, almost everything was based on a shared skill. So you had the crochet club, the knitting club, the chorus, right? The woodworking club, the trivia group. All of these modes of connection that depended on the person bringing something to the table, having a skill that helped them connect. I think that's great. I also think that it leaves out folks who can't continue to connect in that way. So again, what if we used something else, something that every person possesses, creativity, as our foundation for connection? How are you guys feeling at this point about this? Are you thinking, okay, I want to hear more? Are you thinking this sounds like a lot of woo-woo? Can I get like a thumbs up or like a, okay. Thank you for the thumbs up. And for those who gave no response, I'm going to assume it was like 2 thumbs up, big time. Thanks for hanging in there. I know this can sound maybe overwhelming or scary, but stick in there. So Ann Basting is the founder of the program I mentioned, TimeSlips. And she has a book called Creative Care that I highly recommend you read. It's a short book. There's an audio version. And it really transformed the way I work with older adults. And I think it could be beneficial to everyone in this room. Something she says in the book: connection flourishes when we shift away from the expectation of memory and toward the freedom of imagination and shared expression. Would I be safe to assume that a flourishing connection with someone living with dementia is something that we would all like to aim for, right? Feeling connected is something that we can so often take for granted. Then when you feel the connections start to fray and the ties that bind start to wither, you realize that a flourishing connection is the greatest gift. And if there are tools that can help strengthen that connection, I want you to have them. So what is real? How do we connect with a person living with dementia in a real way? Has anyone here heard about reality orientation in terms of talking to someone with dementia? Yes. So that is a classic practice where when someone living with dementia says something that is inaccurate, you reorient them to the reality. So if they're talking as if it's 1945 and they are in Paris, you say, "No, Mom, it's 2024 and you're in the Outer Banks." That's reality orientation. And that used to be really encouraged as a way of communicating with a person living with dementia. I would suggest something different. Oftentimes you hear that a better practice is to join them in their reality, right? Say, "Yes, gosh, Paris is so beautiful right now, isn't it? Should we go get a croissant?" Right? So joining them in their reality, I think, is a better option in terms of the reality orientation. But I think there's a third option. Not their reality or our reality, but what about a reality created by us? That person and you together. A third option, a new shared reality. But how? That is how you are creative. That is where the creative engagement comes into play. To create a reality that we can live in together that is based solely on imagination. And don't worry, I will give solid examples of this in a minute, which I'm seeing some people like, okay, thank goodness, because this is getting a little out there. I would first like to say to engage creatively with a person living with dementia, I would suggest following these rules or guidelines. The main rule is that there are no rules, actually, and that there are no right or wrong answers, right? If you look at this quote from Dr. Basting again, when someone with dementia says something we know is not true, the impulse is to gently correct them, as if calm recitation of facts can heal a wounded brain. But we cannot fix dementia by rebuilding the facts of someone's life, brick by brick. All that does is create a brick wall between us. So when we stop with the bricks and start with the imagination, there are no right or wrong answers. I would also suggest that nothing feel like a test or trivia based. So often we are engaging with someone who has dementia and we're so desperate for them to remember something that we'll say, "Oh, Mom, remember that?" Or, "Come on, you know who that is." We're setting them up for a test. And in the moments when they can rise to that occasion, that feels exciting, right? But imagine how frustrating when they can't. Another thing with creative engagement is that every comment and contribution is affirmed. When we ask someone a question, even what do you do that's creative? When they say they do stained glass or cooking, whenever someone has taken the time to answer a question we've asked, we want to respond enthusiastically. Yes, cooking, that's a great example. When someone living with dementia feels safe enough to be vulnerable and give us a response and answer a question we've asked, no matter what they say, we want to affirm that wholeheartedly. Because you know what? If they feel like they're being heard and what they said was good, they'll keep doing it. If they feel corrected and like they failed a test, they probably won't open up and try again next time. Is anyone here an actor? Has anyone taken an improv class? Okay, yeah, no, me neither. But I have read some books about improv. I just recently was reading a book about Robin Williams, who we know now had dementia himself before he died. And one thing that made Robin Williams such a great entertainer is that he adopted this improv acting technique called yes and. So in acting, when you're improvising, this model of yes and means that with your scene partner, no matter what they say, right, it's not off a script, you're just making things up in improv. No matter what they say, you go along with it. Yes, and, right? So you affirm what they've said, and then you take it to the next level. And that type of improv acting is exactly what I suggest we do with our friends who are living with dementia. Not just entering into their reality or creating a reality together, but really going for it, affirming what they say, and then taking it to the next level, right? So not just, yes, we're in Paris, but, ooh, what color is your beret? What should we wear? I don't know much about Paris, can you tell? Maybe like, what kind of cheese should we eat? Or something like that, right? So really taking what they've said and going with it. So let's use an example of what this type of creative engagement might look like in a conversation with your loved one who has dementia. A great way to start this type of creative connection is by using your physical surroundings. So if you are sitting on the porch with your mom or spouse or sister who's living with dementia, so often, has anyone ever been sitting with their loved one and just racking their brain for something to say to connect? I know I've experienced that before. Good news. The prompt that you need is right in front of you. No matter where you are, you can use your physical surroundings as a springboard for connection. So say you're on the porch with your loved one, and a bird flies up and lands right in front of you. Instead of saying, "Oh, Mom, do you remember what type of bird that is?" Or, "You used to love bird watching, remember that?" Maybe try, "Ooh, that's a pretty bird. Let's give him a name." Or, "Ooh, I hear the bird chirping. What do you think he's saying?" Or, "Oh, he's flying away. Where do you think he's going? Where would you go if you could fly away?" Right? So shifting away from anything rooted in the past or memory and shifting towards creativity. There's no right or wrong answer to what the bird's name is. Unfortunately, we'll probably never know what the bird's name really is. And because of that, we can make our own story and have conversation based on what's around us. And you know what? The person with dementia may not respond when you say, "What's that bird's name?" And that's okay, because you can carry it forward. You could say, "Oh, I think that looks like a Robert." You can do the story yourself, even if they're not engaging right away. Another way to engage creatively is by using your senses, right? So taste, touch, smell, sound, sight. That's another thing we all have access to as a conversation starter. Looking at a photo, being in a new space, eating a new food, using your senses as a conversation starter is easy and effective. So maybe it's even you're sitting with the person you're caring for and you each open up a chocolate bar. And you say, what does that smell like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? Does it have a sound? Maybe the wrapper crinkles? And then, of course, most importantly, what does it taste like, right? But that's a great exercise to do with someone who has dementia. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer. So no matter what they say, it smells or looks or tastes like, you say, yeah, I think you're exactly right. Again, you can use the 5 senses as a connection point anywhere. I recently took one of my clients to Target, which in and of itself was a very exciting outing. Do we have any Target fans here? Yes. Yes, you could spend all day in Target, right? And we almost did. My client and I went to Target to pick up a few things. She wanted a picture frame for this new school photo of her grandkids. We went to the candle aisle in Target and opened up maybe 100 candles. There's a lot of candles at Target. If you need a candle, I highly recommend, and they're not even paying me for this advertisement. But we opened up the candles one by one and smelled them. And I said, Dr. C, what do you think that smells like? And she would take a big inhalation and give an answer. Sometimes it was actually what the label said. Sometimes it was something completely different. But there was no right or wrong answer. We didn't then turn around the candle and I said, ooh, you guessed coconut, but it's cotton. Sorry. Right? It was just smelling the candles, saying what they smelled like to us, and putting them back on the shelf. In Target, you can do this sensory exercise. You can do it anywhere. You could say, ooh, the purple color on these tablecloths is beautiful. What does purple smell like? Right? Someone might say grape. Yeah, does anyone have an answer? What does purple smell like? Sorry? Lilacs. I love that. So what does purple sound like? Remember, there's no right or wrong answer. So you can use anything, again, in your surroundings and use the 5 senses as a springboard for connection. Think about going through a photo album with your loved one or the person you're caring for. I think it's a great exercise, sitting together side by side on the couch and looking through a photo album. Sometimes we're tempted to say, oh, Mom, who is that? Is that Uncle Ray? Or, I like the dress you're wearing in that picture. Where did you get it? Or did you make it? Or, where was this picture taken? Who are you with? When did you go? Those are questions that have right or wrong answers. And sometimes the person you're asking those questions to doesn't know the answers. So we're putting them on the spot and potentially setting them up to feel like they've failed. So instead of asking those questions when you're going through a photo album, what about returning to the 5 senses? Oh, Mom, it looks like it was such a nice day at the beach. What does the beach sound like? What does the beach smell like? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What do you taste when you're at the beach? right? So using the photo album in a different way as a springboard for creativity instead of a memory test. Ooh, what a nice picnic. I love this photo. What does a park like that smell like? What does it look like? What does it taste like? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. I can't say it enough. If they say the park tastes like dirt, you say, yeah, it really does. Or if they say, oh, that day at the beach, it felt disgusting. You say, yeah, I hear that, right? Whatever they are telling us, we're accepting it, we're acknowledging it, and we're affirming it. Because who wants to engage with someone who's disagreeing with them or saying that their experience is wrong? I know I don't. Another way you can engage creatively with a person living with dementia is to ask what creative care calls beautiful questions. It's similar to what we were talking about with the 5 senses, but open-ended and creative questions, kind of like what you think of as an icebreaker question when you're meeting a new group in some sort of orientation. So what does the color blue smell like? Or what do you treasure? If you had a magic wand, what would you wish for? If your feet could talk, what would they say? Does anyone have an answer for that one, by the way? If your feet could talk, what would they say? I'm too heavy. I hurt. Maybe, gosh, I wish I would get washed a little more often. Right? Whatever comes to mind, the answer to a beautiful question is connection. Another way to do beautiful questions is by asking a fill in the blank. I did this with a group once. I lead creative engagements in Durham for groups of about 8 to 10 people living with dementia. It's also something that obviously, as I'm saying today, can happen one-on-one. It was around Halloween, and the beautiful question I asked the group was, fill in the blank. It was Halloween, and the haunted house was covered in blank. We heard a lot of answers, a lot of expected answers. The haunted house was covered in cobwebs. The haunted house was covered in toilet paper. The haunted house was covered in witches. And then my friend said, the haunted house was covered in spaghetti. And our instinct might be to say, huh? No, it's a haunted house. And you said, spaghetti? But instead we all said, yes, the haunted house was covered in spaghetti. And we took it to the next step and said, were there meatballs too? So it's not just agreeing with and affirming the answer, even if it seems like it doesn't make a lot of sense to us, but jumping in with both feet. Was there marinara sauce? Right? The haunted house was covered in spaghetti. I'm sure you're all now picturing that, and it is quite the visual. Another way to engage creatively is based on a weird photo. This is something that I would encourage you all to try with the person you love who's living with dementia. To find a picture online or in a magazine, not of anyone you know, and make a story up about it. These are 2 pictures, if you can see on the slides. One is 2 elephants. One is giving the other a bouquet of flowers. And one is of a family at the beach. I found these pictures on Google, and I would print them out and look at them with my client. And I would say, what do you think is happening here? What is this elephant's name? Where are they? What are they doing? Using a picture that you're both looking at, where the person is not trying to think, am I supposed to know that person? Is that me? Is that someone in the family? they probably know that they don't know these elephants, right? So we can use only imagination and creativity to make a story. When I used this elephant picture with one of my clients, she told me what was happening here. She said that Henrietta was really excited to go on a date with Dumbo. But when she got there, it wasn't Dumbo, it was his twin brother, Jumbo. And she did not want to go on a date with Jumbo. And then she said, but Henrietta looks like she's closing her eyes, so maybe it was a blind date? Or maybe she doesn't like the flowers. She wanted popcorn instead. My client told me an entire story based solely on this picture. It did take a dark turn, I'll tell you. She said they went out to dinner at Maggiano's and that someone was playing the piano and the keys were elephant tusks. So you never know when the story might take a turn. But she needed nothing more than a silly picture and me to ask some wild questions, and she came up with that story. The picture beside that of a family at the beach, I had a different person do this exercise with me, and she was fixated on the daughter on top of the dad's shoulders and said, oh, I just hope that girl's potty trained if she's gonna be on her dad's shoulders. And rather than saying, potty trained, that girl looks like she's old enough to be potty trained, like what are you talking about? I said, gosh, yeah, he might wonder if the bathing suit is wet from the water or something else, right? So we're never correcting each other, but we're experimenting together. Engaging creatively, though, is not limited just to storytelling. A lot of the examples I've given are based in storytelling, and I think that's a great way to be imaginative and creative. But there are other ways as well. The examples that were shouted out earlier in terms of creativity, right? Like cooking or writing poetry or doing stained glass or crochet or photography, right? Or music with people living with dementia. Those were all incredible examples of ways to engage creatively. I think music is such a powerful example. There is so much research and data and science telling us, spelling it out for us, that music is incredibly powerful still for people who are living with dementia. And that is creativity. It's as easy as playing a song and listening to it together. That is creative connection. You can ask, how does this song make you feel? What would you like to taste while you hear this song? Would you like to dance? Music is creative. And if you have a smartphone or a CD player, you can be creative with music. You can also use some of these other art forms. Poetry was a great example. One thing I like to do with my clients is to write poetry with fill in the blanks. So it's combining the art form of poetry and that beautiful question exercise of filling in the blanks. Who here is familiar with Mad Libs? That game where it has the blanks that you fill in and it comes up with a silly story. That's a form of poetry. If you write the outline of a poem and leave some blanks and ask the person living with dementia to think of a word, then together you're creating a collaborative, creative project, right? With crochet, You could let them feel what you're working on, right? What does that feel like? Let them see your progress. Let them try to do a stitch. With photography, I once had a client with dementia, and I got him a disposable camera. And we walked through the neighborhood, right? So this was not a national park or a beautiful garden, and it was not a fancy camera. It was a disposable camera in the neighborhood that he lived in. And he came alive. He took picture after picture, and when he couldn't reach things that he wanted to photograph, when he couldn't get out of his wheelchair, he would direct me. He would say, no, get lower, get lower. Okay, no, lay down. And okay, can you get it then? So I could get a picture of some bush, right? Then we made a photo album. Not that he had to look through and think, oh, who was this? Or when was this? But of pictures that he had taken around the neighborhood. So there are ways to infuse creativity into the art forms that you already love. This is a canvas of a painting I did with my group of 7 women who are living with dementia. I took a blank canvas and I had outlined merry and bright, right? It was right around Christmas. So all I had done was outline the letters in pencil and then given each person a paintbrush, and this is what we came up with. Inside, I was like, shouldn't we be using more red and green? Like, this is a Christmas painting. But I think what they did when following their own creativity turned out to be even more beautiful. And now it's hanging in the halls at their senior center. So creativity can be storytelling, it can be a collaborative canvas. There are a lot of ways to be creative together. Here's another quote from the book I recommended, Creative Care. The stigma of dementia can create a force field that people bump up against and walk away from. So do guilt and the awkwardness of not knowing how to connect. To practice creative care is to move through the force field. To invite someone into a meaning-making process. We all want to be invited. We all want to be included. We all want to be asked, and we want to be heard. That does not change whether you have dementia or not. It can be hard to connect, especially when that connection feels so different from what it used to be. The connection is not the same. And I don't want to pretend like it is. The relationship changes. And that is incredibly hard. But you are showing up. And you are continuing to be present. And that is a creative act of courage. These tools are helpful if you want to try to connect in a new way. But hear me say this. it is just as powerful and just as special and just as meaningful to just be. It is just as meaningful, it is just as special to just be. What you are doing is hard and beautiful. And I guarantee that sometimes you feel underappreciated, or that people don't understand what it's like to be a care partner for someone living with dementia. I want to say that I see you and I appreciate you. And the person who you're caring for loves you. There's a book called Still Alice, written by an author, Lisa Genova. She has another book, not a novel, but a book called Remember. She said that when her grandfather was living with dementia, he didn't remember her name or that she was his granddaughter. He didn't remember anything about her. But he knew that when they were in a room together, he was in the presence of someone who loved him. He couldn't name the relationship, couldn't name her, but would smile because when she walked in the room, he was in the presence of someone who loved him. So I appreciate you listening to these tips, but I want to encourage you to remember it's okay to just be together. And I want to thank you for being together here with me today. And I want to offer up myself as a care partner to you as you continue to care for those you love. Thank you so much.